have everything of a great conspiracy. How did I get here?
Yeah, it's kind of a creepy place, you know, because there's no light at all.
A lot of experiments out there.
Plutonium, nuclear weapon.
Nuclear destruction. They're just balls of light. There's a ghost now.
All right, coming to you live from the Napa Valley wine country, just outside the mystical Sonoma Mountains. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm Dave Cruz. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, the year of our Lord. Very excited to be here tonight. We have a great guest, really awesome, really happy to have him back on the show. We have paranormal researcher, ufologist, just about everything you can think of. We're going to talk a lot about that. Mr. Preston Dennett is on the show with us tonight. Going to be amazing. I can't wait. The call-in numbers tonight is 1-800-588-0335. Again, that number is 1-800-588-0335 when the phone lines are open after the first break. So that's roughly around 8:05, something like that. You'll know. I'll let you know. But 1-800-588-0335. We'll try to get that into the chat rooms. Speaking of that, you can go to the Beyond the Strange official Discord chat room, Strange Chat. Want to get in there? The easiest way to do is go to beyondstrange.com and click on the chat tab. And that'll get you set up to get into the Strange Chat for tonight and every Sunday night. You can hang out there. There's lots of topics, also other channels in the channel. And yeah, it's just a great place to hang out and be there. As a matter of fact, we got Russ Bailey. Thank you again, my brother. Russ hanging out in the chat. Toby just landed, it says. So welcome aboard. And the Night Stalker is hanging out as well. We got our other families and friends in the Fringe FM Discord channel as well. If you want to go to the main hall, and Making Dirty Bacon's hanging out there. We got Fiasek, Youngin, Diana, everyone's hanging out there. Bill Ohm, my brother, thank you for being there. And yeah, we got those two chat rooms going on. Take your pick. And we also got our friends in the YouTube chat room as well. And thank you for hanging out in there as well. We will be back and forth in all those chat rooms to make sure that you guys are getting your questions to Preston after we get into the mix. All right, so just a couple of things really quick, and we'll get to you guys in a second here. We'll get things rolling, but first, got to pay the bills. Please go to gothempextracts.com, please, for all your CBD needs. And you can put in the promo code Beyonders, one word, Beyonders, and get 10% off all your CBD needs. That is gothempextracts.com. You can find the banner on the webpage as well, the show's webpage. Visit beyondthestrange.com for all social media links, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. And if you're watching YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe and share. Greatly appreciate that. And look for the podcasts of the show later on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spreaker. And again, please leave a like and subscribe and share the show. Everything helps. Okay, done with all that. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Preston Dennett began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and coworkers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, the author of 26 books and more than 100 articles about UFOs and the paranormal. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines, including Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON UFO Journal, Nexus Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, UFOligists, Phenomena Magazine, Outer Limits Magazine, and others. His writings has been translated into several different languages, including German, Portuguese, French, Russian, Icelandic. He has appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including this one, Beyond the Strange. And his research has been presented in LA Times, the Daily News, LA News, the Dallas Morning News, and other newspapers. He has taught classes on various paranormal subjects and lectures across the United States. He currently resides in Reseda, California. If you'd like to contact Preston, please email him at Preston E. That's PRESTONE at packbell.net. Please, everyone, help me welcome back to the show Preston Dennett. Preston, thank you again, my friend, for coming back to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Yeah, great to be back.
Thank you, my friend. And yeah, we got a little bit more clever on the YouTube, so we're both on there with some graphics in the background and all that good stuff. I've been tinkering around with all that stuff, and it's a nice presentation now. So, anyways, people will have more to look at than just you and me, even though you're much better looking to look at than I am. So,
oh, shucks, thanks.
I've got a face for radio, my friend. So, anyways, glad to be that you're back, and very exciting times. We got this crazy, ridiculous virus crisis going on right now, and to me, it just seems like it has stopped paranormal investigations in its tracks. One, because you really can't get out there. They're not letting us go anywhere. They're not letting us in anywhere. And two, it just seems like everyone is so focused on this virus. For me, it just seems like, we really need to get back into the paranormal, because there's things happening all over the world that we don't know about. And who better to bring on than Preston Dennett to kind of give us an idea of what's really happening right now. And you actually have a book that came out in February that talks a little bit more about things that happen in the UFO world and the paranormal world. So we'll talk about that. But first, Preston, just to give the audience a background, what really made you get into all these topics and these UFO subjects?
I was a skeptic for sure. I never in a million years thought I would get involved in something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I was all about science, materialism. I didn't believe in life after death or ghosts. But I have to tell you, I was pretty young. I was 21 years old, 1986, and I heard a report on the news about a sighting over Alaska, and remembered my brother had a couple of years earlier said he'd seen a UFO. And I asked him about it, and he told me this really dramatic story about seeing this metallic disc with colored lights, a dome on top, which he and his friends chased for several miles in their car. So I'm like, wow. And Mark's like, yeah, you know, if you want to talk to Phil and Greg, those were his friends, go ahead. So I did. And it just kind of snowballed. Yeah, I found out my sister-in-law had a sighting. She had two friends with her. I ended up talking to one of them. I brought it up at work. The lady I'd worked with for years and years. Like, me and my whole family watched this thing. You know, we were at in the San Bernardino Mountains, and this star-like object was just darting around all over the place, stopping, hovering, then shooting across the sky. And in walks Dorothy, another lady I'd worked with for years, and she's like, UFOs? Oh yeah. One followed me and my mom and my best friend home from the library. And I'm like, wow, really? She's like, yeah, I was right over the car. You can talk to my mom. And I did. I talked to her friend. And they lived 5 minutes home from the library. This is what she says. We live 5 minutes away. It's so weird because we left it exactly at 9 o'clock. This thing followed us all the way home. We ran upstairs and watched this thing dart away. Looked at the clock. It's now 10:15. So she's like, and we lost an hour. And this was before Missing Time, you know, really became well known.
Yeah.
Bud Hopkins' book had just come out in like mass paperback. I think it was after that. You know, I'd have to look it up, but she never read a UFO book. She didn't know what she was talking about. So yeah, it hit home for me, and it wasn't not good news. I was upset. I'm still upset. Because yeah, I mean, it caused me to reevaluate everything, and I've become much more skeptical whenever anyone tells me anything, because found out for the first 21 years of my life I had been lied to, basically. I mean, this subject isn't taught in schools. It sure should be. And people, you know, even within their own families, aren't talking about this. So I felt scandalized and a little bit hurt. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And they said you wouldn't have believed me, which is probably true. I don't know. But it was a tough adjustment for sure.
Was it the very first time you've learned about UFOs, or do you remember any UFO encounters like, oh yeah, programs on TV? Like for me, I remember watching, In Search Ripley's and In Search of, and all those shows.
Yeah, I sure do. I do remember seeing In Search of, and there was a story on there of a family who had all seen an object. I thought, well, you know, they're misperceiving. There's just no way. Because I'm thinking in my mind, you know, the stars are just too far away and I don't want to hear it. It's simply there's no way to travel between stars, you know, and with our own understanding of physics, as we know it, faster than light travel is probably not possible. I think it is, actually. I mean, I think the presence of UFOs demonstrates it. And certainly there's enough people who've been taken on board them who report some really amazing stuff in that regard, how ETs travel. So, yeah, I had a lot of misconceptions about UFOs that was keeping me from looking into this. Like one thing, I'd hear about people seeing humanoids. I'm like, you know, this sounds very much like Star Trek to me. You know, how can we believe this if people are seeing beings that look so much like us?
Right.
But that's what people are seeing. To ignore it is not scientific. You know, I know skeptics who are like, no, I don't believe in UFOs. Show me a shred of evidence. And there's a lot of evidence out there. You know, it's not just eyewitness testimony. There's landing trace cases. There's medical evidence, injuries and healings. There's metal fragments. There's all kinds of evidence that people who are skeptics find it very easier just to ignore.
Have you personally seen a UFO?
Yeah, I sure have. And up close and more than once. But not until I started researching this stuff. I have to tell you, I grew up in Topanga Canyon where there's a lot of reports. It's pretty much one of the major hotspots here in Southern California. And I never saw anything. I was outside a lot, pretty much not always at night, but certainly a lot during the day. But after I started investigating it, yeah. And I think there's something, I don't think that's a coincidence. I actually looked it up. It's called UFO investigators disease.
Really?
Turns out, honest to God, Ed Conroy started investigating Whitley Strieber and began having sightings. And he's the guy who coined this term. And it turns out a lot of investigators have had sightings. I know Bud Hopkins, his research was sparked by his sighting. Brad Steiger, I mean, I could go down the list of, people who have had major encounters. But my first sighting was my really good one that I can unequivocally say that this was not normal. I'll never forget it. It was 1993, I believe. Could have been 92, late July. I'm driving home from my brother and my sister-in-law. And I'm just going out of my mind with this subject. I mean, I'm staying late at their house talking about these cases I'm working on and like, could this be real? And is the world being invaded by aliens? And what's going on? Why isn't anyone talking about this? And so I'm driving my home and it's definitely, on my mind when this bird swoops down in front of my car. This is late at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see instantly, it's not a bird. I was going about 2 miles an hour around a hairpin corner and it was a ball of light, a little ball of light about the size of, I don't know, maybe a ping pong ball, maybe a little bigger, but not super bright, but definitely very defined and right up in front of my windshield. I'm going to say a foot, maybe 2 feet away, but no more than that, probably closer to a foot. And it went right across and across again and halfway and then forward, dipped down and went straight up through the trees. And I'm like, what was that? And, I didn't tell anyone and I kind of forgot about it. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I've had other people who've had sightings tell me this.
Yeah.
And so this happened to me. I don't remember driving home. More lately, I'm like, missing time
again. Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I never really thought about it until, years and years later. But that happened. It was like, I don't know, a few months later, I'm like, hey, maybe a year later. I don't know. It was sometime later. It just dropped into my mind. I'm like, I saw that. I remember that. I should have turned around. I mean, I was right. I had just left my brother's house. I should have turned around and been like, hey, oh my God. So that raises questions in my mind. And it's not so I feel like there's an interaction. It came down, and targeted me, no doubt in my mind. And that sort of thing has happened again. Man, probably my best case kind of was two sightings, revolved around this one lady I was interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
She's now in Australia, but she was living up in Acton. We had met to see the crystal skull, Max the Crystal Skull.
Okay.
Was having a meeting and she was there. I sat next to her and we started talking. She was an amazing lady and turned out she had some UFO encounters and she agreed to be interviewed. And boy, did she have UFO encounters. She was having abductions. And I got to know her pretty well. And her encounters were ongoing. She was telling me all these crazy stories where like ETs would come into her, she had hybrid babies. ETs would come into her bedroom and pull her up and she'd be halfway up to the UFO and she woke up and she was really upset and she turns to the Greys and says, put me back right now. And they were all very surprised to see that she had woken up and put her back in her bed. And another time she's like, I woke up, there were Greys around, it freaked me out. I jumped up and I kicked one in the neck and its neck snapped and it fell to the ground. And all the other Greys scooped it up and left. I'm like, damn, this is crazy. I've heard stories like this, but this is one of my bigger cases. She had other witnesses. but I was having a little trouble trying to digest all this. I'm thinking, is this real? Is this real? I'm transcribing her interview.
Right.
I'm transcribing all these interviews I've done with her. I'm like, I wonder if this lady is legit. I think she is. But I was having some doubts when suddenly I got this very strong impulse to run into the roof of my condo. So I did. I grabbed my glasses, which I use for driving. I'm a little bit nearsighted, not terribly, but for some reason I grabbed them and went up onto the roof of a condo, which I don't live there now. You're not supposed to go up there. And I've been up there, but it's not something I normally do by any means. And I wasn't up there maybe 10 seconds. I'm thinking, what the heck? When this giant orange light appears, and it's got to be maybe 100 feet away. This condo kind of overlooked the LA River there, and it was right over the river. And 50 feet up, maybe 100, since I'm on the third story there. And it's kind of at eye level, really. So it blasts me with this message, kind of. I don't even know how to describe this other than to say it said, "Hello, it's us. You don't believe it? Watch this." And it wasn't so many words, but it was clear enough because I felt it. I didn't hear a voice, but honest to God, that was the message, and it was clear. You don't believe? Watch this. And this thing starts darting around, back and forth, and big, tight moves, and goes down, 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 and disappears. Maybe 20 seconds sighting. No longer than that, I don't think. But I'm like, whoa, holy smoke. And I called her up. I think it was the next day because it was pretty late.
Yeah. And
I'm like, you wouldn't believe, I think your ETs showed themselves. She's like, oh, they do that. I told you. and I'm like, really? Let's do it again. Because I wasn't ready.
Right.
And she's like, okay, I'll get back to you. I'll get in contact with them. So she's got telepathic contact, right?
Right.
And so this lady's amazing. She's shown me some crazy stuff beyond this too. So she calls me up and says, all right, we're going to go off the 210 freeway. This is in Pasadena, and they'll show up. I'm like, sure they will. I've done this with other people, and they have never showed up. So I went with her and my sister-in-law and my nephew, and we parked off the freeway, which you're not supposed to do, and hiked up this little dirt road. Her and I got ahead about 100 yards, and we reached the top of this hill where they're supposed to show up. And my sister-in-law and my nephew, we can't see them. They're halfway down the little hill here. And she grabs my arm and spins me around. She's screaming, and right like across the street, maybe 100 feet away, and 20 feet up, 50 feet up, was this giant golden sphere, lit up with golden lights. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Easily one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And just silent and as big as a house, perfectly round, looking at us. We're looking at it. It's
incredible.
Man, we're just screaming and screaming, like, oh my God. And this thing gave us maybe 5 seconds, maybe 10, before it starts to scoot away pretty slowly at first. Maybe 5 miles an hour, then scoots up to about 30 miles an hour, and then whoosh is this golden streak around the mountain, some 4 or 5 miles away. And boom, it's gone in a snap. So that was my best sighting. But pretty regularly, I'll have anomalous lights or maybe even a craft show up. It's been a while, so I'm kind of overdue.
Does this person that you went with, this lady, are you still in contact with her?
I am. Yeah, she's in Australia, so it's kind of hard to really kind of connect.
Sure.
But yeah, I sure am. She's an amazing person. Yeah.
And would you say that she's probably one of the only ones that can, on demand, have a UFO come and visit? I mean, because like you said, I've heard people that do the same thing, that say that they go out UFO watching, sky watching. They try to communicate with the ET or whatever it is that shows itself, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. But you're, it sounds like this lady can just, and just every time.
I don't know about every time, but
The times that you're with her.
She did it another time. I have to tell you, I was being interviewed by the Learning Channel.
Mm-hmm.
And this Stephen Greer did this as well. I have to say, when he came to LA,
okay,
a UFO showed up.
You've experienced that with Stephen Greer, because I've heard this too.
Oh yeah, he came up to LA to form a CSETI group, and I joined. I didn't want to. It was $300 to listen to him speak. I didn't have that kind of money.
Right. No, I understand.
By coincidence, the newspaper calls me up and they're like, "We have no idea why we're doing this, but we want you to go and we'll pay your way if you write a story." I'm like, "You got to be kidding!" All right, that's never happened before or since. So yeah, I went to the meeting and he takes us out, and sure enough, a UFO does show up, and we formed this little group of. Initially, it was 15, but pretty much down to about 5 or 10 core members.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have a number of encounters where we essentially called them down. Almost always anomalous lights with just a little bit of ambiguity to it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little dissatisfying to me. But yeah, one time I went with the same lady, which showed me a UFO twice, essentially, because the Learning Channel had called up and wanted to call down a UFO. And I'm like, all right, let's go to Topanga. There's a lot of sightings there. And what happened was we set up and they had their cameras going for a good hour or two. And they're like, all right, we have to change film. And they pulled the film out of the camera and this thing swoops down.
Oh, man.
Literally, as they pulled out the footage, and everyone's screaming, and then whooshes away real fast. It's like, what the heck? Thanks.
Right, yeah. You weren't ready for it.
Yeah, she can do it. I've talked to I've had other people come out like, yeah. I've been to some famous contactees who are like, I can do it. And I thought it was a balloon, honestly, what I saw. So
yeah, no, I get it. It could be anything, but still, this seems like it's responding or replying back to wanting to be seen. And
yes, CE5s are nothing new. I remember, Stephen Greer kind of popularized it a little bit, but when he started mentioning how do you call down UFOs, the first 2 cases he quoted, I was really amazed to hear actually were ones that I had investigated. One from Santa Monica. Yeah, it was crazy. One from Santa Monica, in which the special effects guy had set up a peacock's tail for NBC in pitch lights, really bright colored lights that you can control. And it looked like a half disc. Kind of, they turn it on and 2 UFOs come swooping down.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right? And then, so you can use lights to call down UFOs. That's one of the tenets, sort of the CE5 protocol.
Well, Preston, we're up against the first break. Actually, we've gone over a little bit, but when we come back, we definitely want to get more into these types of stories, and want to go over your book and get that information out to people, and talk some more sightings and UFOs. This is awesome. I'm speaking with ufologist, paranormal researcher Preston Dennett, and this has been a fascinating conversation so far. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this.
This is the Rogie Report news on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie. Is the Matrix possibly breaking down? NASA has discovered there's a parallel universe where time runs backward. Basically, COVID marked the beginning of our Black Mirror episode. In a recent interview, U.S. Senator Harry Reid brought up that there are many universes, and that we studied them. So, are these breadcrumbs? Movie studios will often release information on the internet to gauge the response of fans. And what's to say the government wouldn't do something similar to releasing information to see if it picks up steam or gauge how people respond? New Scientist released an article stating that NASA scientists has found the parallel reality, and 3 research papers have been done on the topic. The original research paper is from the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, a balloon-based experiment that found upward-pointing cosmic ray-like events. The second research paper theorized that the ANITA results could provide evidence for a CPT symmetric universe, where time would run backward from the Big Bang and where antimatter would dominate. And a third paper was published in the Astrophysical Journal from IceCube, not the rapper, Neutrino Observatory, that suggests we need to consider alternative explanations to explain the ANITA data. In 2016, ANITA detected anomalous signals, evidence of a high-energy particle, extremely high-energy neutrinos, coming up from the Earth's surface, but no source. And that seemed impossible according to the New Scientist article, which went on to state, explaining this signal requires the existence of a topsy-turvy universe, created in the same Big Bang as our own, and existing in parallel with it. In this mirror world, positive is negative, left is right, and time runs backwards. Perhaps a universe made of antimatter rather than matter. Others are disputing this evidence of a parallel reality. Maybe, just maybe it depends which reality you're currently in. India's only paranormal helpline sees a rise in calls amid the coronavirus lockdown. A helpline that was launched 3 months ago used to get 2 to 3 calls per day. But now the paranormal helpline is receiving 8 to 10 calls daily. The paranormal company provides assistance to people who claim to have encountered a ghost or any other paranormal incident around them. The owner says, "I've got about 35 cases and I've solved them all." This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
Hey there, this is Ryan Gable of the Secret Teachings radio broadcast, and you are listening to the inquisitive Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange on the Fringe FM.
Have you ever looked skyward and pondered UFOs, aliens, time travel, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions? Want to explore paranormal activities, hauntings, and various cryptoids such as Bigfoot, sea and lake monsters? Greetings, Beyonders. I'm Author Casper Parks, and you're listening to Beyond the Strange with host Dave Cruz. Help spread the word by posting links to forums and social media. Available at YouTube, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. We are speaking with Preston Dennett, who's authored 26 books, a whole bunch of articles, his latest being Onboard UFO Encounters, True Accounts of Contact with Extraterrestrials. Preston has been a guest of the show in the past, and he has been good enough to come back, and I just want to welcome back to the show Preston Dennett. Thank you again, Preston, for being on the show tonight. And it's been a fascinating half hour already. It just seems like time goes by too quickly, my friend, when we're talking. And definitely when we're talking UFOs and paranormal and all that good stuff. But we're in the middle of a good conversation about these UFOs that you first were encountering and with different people, and that some of these people could actually bring these UFOs on demand. I had heard about Stephen Greer. Also, I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Costa Mateus? He's also done the same thing with CE5.
No, can't say I am, but I know Sisto Paz Wells, his Rama group, also does CE5 work.
Yeah, there's just probably a lot of people out there who've done this, and I think it's pretty fascinating that people can bring these UFOs pretty much on demand. Do you think that these UFOs are here as benevolent creatures, or that there's kind of a mixture of both that want to do other things other than be our friends, if you will?
Well, just based on what people are actually experiencing, I'm going to say it's a mixture of both, skewed towards benevolence to a certain extent. I think it'd be naive to say these are all our space brothers. But for the most part, I don't think UFOs are something to be afraid of. I don't see an agenda of hostility, of wanting to kill people or hurt them or eat them or, scare them. There's no accounts of people being taken on board and tortured or sadistic behavior on the parts of the ETs where they enjoy people's pain, which we have as humans. But their behavior is very much like people. It really is. They do treat people rudely, certainly, without feeling, and like a lab rat in a number of cases. There's just no way around it. And kidnapping, abducting someone out of their home or out of a moving vehicle, this is not right. And I just cannot see any excuse for that. If they're saving our lives, then say so. An emergency doctor has the grace to say, hey, I'm just trying to help. So that's a problem. And I'm not quite sure how to reconcile it. But here's why I'm saying ultimately I'm hopeful about ET contact that's really close up. Is because people are being taken on board. Mm-hmm. I'm convinced of this because they're not where they're supposed to be when people are looking for them, and they're reporting this kind of experience. They come back with scars, sometimes healings. They're physically examined. That's the thing that happens most. People are getting their genetic samples taken, for sure. I've gotten early cases right from the beginning and still get them. There's a bunch in the book, the hybrid baby phenomena. This is one of their agendas. And it's a vital agenda, and I think this is what's led to their sort of kidnapping behavior and their really rudeness to humans, is because they're desperate and they've got a job to do, and they have no regard for what stops them. But when they give messages, and this is universal among ET types, when talking about grays, praying mantis, human-looking, maybe not reptilians so much, but catch-all humanoids, which is a large category, they give the same types of messages. They're telling people the same thing. And it's usually being given warnings about nuclear proliferation, our prejudices, our warlike ways, upcoming hurricanes, societal unrest, this sort of thing. Big stress on nuclear, for sure. They also take people to the control room. This is not uncommon. I was looking at my book Onboarding UFO Encounters, and 6 of them were taken to the control room and told how these craft work. This is, I think, an attempt to get us off fossil fuels and show us that there are alternative energy sources. It's definitely one of their agendas. And thirdly, these messages fall into a third category, which I would describe as spiritual. Like, how would I put this? Well, people come away from their experiences. They're very interested in hands-on healing or doing Reiki, or they start channeling or start having out-of-body experiences or dreams that come true.
This is all connected to the UFO experience.
It absolutely is. And if I'm looking at these witnesses, they have a wide variety of paranormal experiences. It's not unusual to have poltergeist breakouts following an abduction. It's not unusual. It's not unusual for people to have dreams that come true. So there's for sure a connection there. And this points towards, I think, their agenda. They're trying to wake people up to our full human potential, because we can do telepathy. We can do clairvoyance. Telepathy has been proven in a laboratory setting, as has human levitation for that matter. And this connects to that too. There are a number of people who've experienced levitation following their encounters. So all of this kind of does have a weird tie-in. And that what I think they're doing is trying to save our planet, or maybe where they're experimenting, they're just trying to save us, and there's nothing altruistic about it. I think one of their main agendas is physically healing people and mentally. I've got 3 cases of people who were healed of suicide, over 300 documented healing cases of everything from colds to cancer. And that's a lot to have documented, because I'd say you can easily times that by 10 or 100, considering most people don't report their encounters.
How long do you think this has been going on, Preston? I mean, as far back as how long do you think? I mean, I know it's probably been going on since, men were Neanderthal or something like that. But I mean, in more modern times, like 1900s, would you say, were there any first accounts of these abductions, if you will? Would you even call them abductions? I mean, what do we call them?
Abductions offend some people.
Mm-hmm.
And as is the word contactee or abductee, the word experiencer is kind of cumbersome. I just say onboard UFO encounters.
Okay,
that's what they are. Whether you got there on your own free will or not. But I do think it's historically unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
We know for sure UFOs have been around since before recorded human history, because we can see the gradations of our recording their visits in terms of petroglyphs, some of the first recordings,
yes,
and hieroglyphics. But we see later ones in terms of stone artifacts and metal artifacts that look like the shuttle, or
frescoes and paintings.
Right, wood carvings, all through the Middle Ages, right up through the Renaissance, all the way up. Each 100 years, there's a couple of really good paintings. I was looking through them, like, wow. So we know that they've been around forever. There's been some big waves, but nothing like the modern age of UFOs. Really, I mean, 1947 is a major cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
Where something happened, possibly coinciding with the nuclear age, as a number of investigators have pointed that out. But you can look through the 1870, you're not going to find large numbers of people reporting grays,
right?
Or 1880 or 1890, but around 1898 or so, we start getting some reports of weird airships. It was a weird phase of UFO activity that's never been fully explained. And it's so bizarre, because these are airships like Zeppelins. It's caused people's theories about UFOs to kind of search for alternatives other than extraterrestrial. So I don't know, that kind of airship wave faded out after 10 or so years, 15. And we've got nothing from the 20s, really. Swedish airships in the 30s, these weird kind of ghost rockets. Foo Fighters during World War II is when it started to ramp up. But it wasn't until literally the 1950s that there are some scattered abduction reports leading about to the 1920s that sound like grays. Bud Hopkins marched out a couple of these. I've seen a few others. They're outliers for sure. Wasn't until really the 1950s, 60s that people started to report abductions in any kind of numbers.
What about the Battle of Los Angeles?
Yeah, I've talked to first-hand witness. I've got the best book, I think, on the subject. I've got a couple of them.
That's like the 1940s, right?
Yeah, this was like right around World War II, or the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So we were very much jittery, and LA was sent into full blackout because these objects, which they thought were planes at first, came over Culver City, which is pretty much downtown LA.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just one or two; it was a number of them. And there was the guy I talked to says they weren't planes. That can tell you that. And one guy I talked to said it came very close to his house, just like 30 feet up, one of these objects, and it was not a normal object, and it was silent. Most of these are described as being pretty high up there, with one large spherical object that stayed for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when, we actually marched out the army and shot at this thing, 1,500 rounds of ammunition. LA Times got a picture of all the searchlights converged on this, the bombs exploding.
Famous picture.
People tried to say this isn't a balloon, a dirigible. I don't find that at all credible, because this thing, stayed in place for a very long time, for one thing. It's very difficult for a dirigible to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not sure if they can get high enough to avoid these rounds of ammunition, but you could see these things exploding right next to it. So 5 people died as a result of this incident, by the way, from just car accidents and heart attacks and falling debris. And this thing moves off, and we thought that was the end of it, but turns out there was a cover-up. They tried to say it was a balloon until the paper came out the next day with that photograph. And then they're like, no, all right, we don't know what it was, unidentified planes. Found out later there was some documentation about this released through the Freedom of Information Act, which totally verified the incident, that they didn't know what it was. And later more information came out due to the research of, I think it's Robert Wood, who's a crash retrieval guy, saying that one of these objects was actually shot down and they recovered it pre-Roswell. So definitely a possibility we were shooting at them.
Yeah, it didn't probably help that Orson Welles came out with World of Worlds right before all of this started happening, pretty much in 1930s. And people were already on edge with with the war going around, and that was happening at the time, and I think around that time, like you said, we probably weren't getting our relations with Russia wasn't, the Soviet Union wasn't really doing very well. So I mean, there's so many things that could tie into this, and
I got to feel sorry for the military. I mean, I get it from a military standpoint. This is an invader.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine. I've had friends, I've worked with people who came from the military for years and years and years, and they just say, they have so many stories, they wouldn't even know where to begin. And so many times that we have gone to really close to going to, nuclear war. And, people just don't realize how often it happened during the Cold War. And even probably today, who knows? Like I said, we don't really know. There's so many things happen behind the scenes. And then to go along with that, we got the paranormal with UFOs and ufology and aliens. It's just it's crazy. I wouldn't even know where to begin in the military and being an official and just saying, hey, they're here. I would just say they're here. It's true. It's all true. We just don't even know where to begin. But
well, we know they're looking into the paranormal aspect at least a little bit in terms of remote viewing and psychic spying and things like that. So they know.
Yeah, I do feel that they do that. They do know. In terms of onboard visitations and encounters with these aliens, what else could you tell us that you talk about in the book that we can learn about more as far as encounters with aliens?
Well, that's what's kind of interesting. Each case is unique. I get mostly reports of grays, and onboard encounters do follow a general pattern. There's, like I said, a lot of people who report being physically examined, but it's just weird. Some of these cases get so darn bizarre. It's crazy. Like I'll talk about the case of Pat. She grew up in Florida. She was she was born in 43. That's right. And she was like 6 years old, was in the second story bedroom when she sees a gray peering in through the window. She didn't know what grays were. She thought something followed her home from the circus, which they had visited that day.
Yeah, I can see that.
And she told her grandparents where she was staying, and they're like, honey, you're on the second floor. There's no way you saw anything. So she didn't know how to categorize it, but she knew it wasn't her imagination. But started having some unusual experiences as she grew up. She was out in the backyard playing in the forest there. She was 12 or 13 years old, and it just lit up like daylight and completely blinded her. She was very disoriented. I think she had missing time. She does. At the time, she thought she saw God or something. She did not know.
Wow.
So she started to have, these kinds of unusual experiences that were very hard for her to figure out until one day she's, coming home from a psychic class. She's learning, about psychic stuff, which she became interested in. And she walks into her living room, and there's grays there, sitting in her living room, standing there. One was wearing a pinstripe suit. She said, I don't know what you're going to say. I don't know if you're going to believe me, but I'm like, yeah, I believe you, because Whitley Strieber reported that. Got a couple of other cases of people who report that same thing. They do it, I think, to reduce the fear factor, perhaps, which worked in her case. So she started having, dreams of being on board a UFO, and was usually like being physically examined or shown stuff. And she called them UFO dreams, until one time she has this, I'll shorten this because it's kind of a long story.
We got 6 minutes or 5 minutes. Yeah.
All right. I can get this done in at least 2. I'm not aiming for 2. But because it's a crazy story. She wakes up and she's standing not inside a UFO, she's standing outside of one. It's a big old saucer, the huge ramp. There's grays wandering around it. There's human-looking ETs. One human-looking ET is standing right next to her. He's short. He's wearing a blue jumpsuit. And they're overlooking this town, which looks like maybe a town in Mexico or something. It's a little village, or a big village, but not the United States. She was pretty sure, just by looking at the trees and stuff. And it leads her into the town, and they start waking people up and taking them into the craft. People followed like sheep. She obeyed what they said without question. She's not sure why, but she had the feeling they were rescuing them from some kind of disaster. So she estimates they pulled some 200, 300, 500 people into the UFO. And there's another one right next to it, a couple hundred yards away, doing the same thing. And they're still pulling these people in when suddenly there's this giant explosion. It's a volcano, and it sends this wall of mud and ice and houses and bodies and debris through this village. The UFO comes down and scoops up a few more survivors. And next thing she knows, she's being deposited in her driveway.
Oh, wow.
Where she now lives. I think it was Louisiana, or she moved from Florida. At any rate, they set her down, and she remembers going back and getting into bed, and wakes up the next morning thinking, oh my God, I've had one of my UFO dreams. She calls her friends, like, you're not going to believe this one. And her friend's like, you better turn on the TV right now. And she does. And it's the volcano, Nevada del Ruiz, has exploded. It killed like 30,000 people in the town of Armero, which was where she was. She recognized it. She saw what she had just experienced now on TV. It was very traumatizing for her. She does not know where these 1,000 people who were rescued, apparently, where they are now. But she ended up seeing a psychiatrist over this.
Sure.
It upset her a whole lot, because she's never had that kind of verification, that kind of corroboration before. And it shook her up. Weird case.
That's terrifying. I mean, it's just, how often do you find that a lot of people have dreams of being on board UFOs and communicating with aliens and extraterrestrials? I mean, I have a personal experience myself where I had a dream where I woke up and I was on board a ship, and I could described the interior it was all white. It was all white. The control panels weren't really visible unless you got really close to the panels. You can see there were windows where you could see outside. Of course, it's space. It's just a really bizarre dream. And I was waking up from a table, got on my feet, started walking around a little bit, started noticing around, didn't see any extraterrestrials. But it felt surreal, and it felt very like I've been there before, familiar, to me. And then, of course, I woke up a little hazy, but I remember the dream, and I still remember it. Do you have people describing that kind of, phenomena?
Yeah. I mean, there are dreams and there are dreams. But you describing that, there's a couple of red flags going off, what I would call markers, pointing towards a real phenomena. I think you can have, dreams about UFOs and even being on board one just because you're interested, and these sort of things come up, just like watching a movie or something. Or then you can have a dream that's like an unusual dream that's not like a dream you've had before, which is more vivid, perhaps, kind of like what you're describing.
This feels very vivid.
Which could be either dream recall of an event or an actual event. But the way some of these, the white interior, the feeling of familiarity, that's a very little known red flag. A lot of people don't know that in the media, but this is something you hear quite often. People are like, hey, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah, I've got other stories, and I've actually had some confirmation with experiencers who feel that I might have been abducted at one time, and it's very possible. I just they zap my brain. But we're gonna go.
Yeah, well, when I hear people describe the portholes and everything, I'm like, they describe it the same way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting indeed. Let's go ahead and take our second break, Preston, and when we come back, we'll open up the phone lines for one, and we got a special caller who wants to call in to the show, and that is Jeremy Scott of Into the Paranormal, right here on the Fringe FM. You are listening to Preston Dennett and Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this.
Lighting the Void, and you're listening to KTOK Digital Broadcasting Station, The Fringe FM.
Please listen. Now is not the time to fear. When your immune system is strong, shields up. You have very little worries. If your immune system is compromised, you're susceptible to all viruses. I say shields up and no fear. Try Heart Love from GetTheTea.com. Heart Love has a special ingredient called allicin. It comes from the healing part of the garlic plant. No garlic breath. No garlic leaking out your pores, just pure immune-building ingredients that gets your shields up. Heart Love is a unique blend of herbs that loves to build you up. Google garlic and know the benefits. One Heart Love pill is equal to 20 cloves of garlic. 20 cloves! Shields up. You've heard of our Life Change Cleansing Tea at GetTheTea.com. Now try Heart Love. And by the way, take your blood pressure and watch weekly what happens. So here's how to purchase. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and build your shields. That's GetTheTea.com. Mention Ray in the coupon code and hit apply and receive free shipping.
Hey Fringe listeners, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, asking you to join us live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fringe FM. Visit beyondthestrange.com for links to chat, social media, and schedules of the show. And remember, always stay strange. Asta.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Welcome back. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Thank you for being here tonight. We are speaking with paranormal researcher, author, investigator, Preston Dennett. Preston has written 26 books, over 100 articles. He's been featured in Paranormal Magazine, Nexus Magazine, MUFON, UFO Journal. He's been translated. His books have been translated in several different languages: German, Portuguese, French, Russian, Icelandic. He's been in many newspaper articles, the LA Daily News, Dallas Morning, just on and on and on. You can find Preston at Preston, I believe it's PrestonDennett.weebly.com. He'll straighten me out here in a minute, but I just want to welcome back to the show Mr. Preston Dennett. Thank you very much for being on the show tonight, my friend.
Hey, thanks again. Yeah.
And I don't know if I mentioned that correctly or not. Was it Preston Dennett at Weebly.com?
Yeah. PrestonDennett.weebly.com.
PrestonDennett.weebly.com. So yeah, that's there you go. And your latest book is Onboard UFO Encounters, True Accounts of Contact with Extraterrestrials. And you can get all these books at Amazon.com.
That's right.
Personally, I enjoy the Kindle version. So you can get that in Kindle as well. But definitely get those in hardcover and paperback. Fascinating conversation. It's always a great conversation with you, Preston. I appreciate it. And I mentioned that there are going to be some calls here pretty soon. But there was a question that actually came in from the YouTube chat. And I'm trying to pull that up right now. But it involves the Men in Black. That's something I don't think we talked about last time you were on the show. So Russ Bailey from the YouTube chat wants to know, have you had many encounters with the Men in Black, or any encounters with the Men in Black for that matter?
Well, I know who they are. I don't get a lot of Men in Black cases. It depends kind of what you mean about Men in Black. There's definitely been some government interference.
Okay.
For sure. I've had one witness whose hypnosis tapes were stolen. Another guy from upstate New York, whose case I wrote about, he wrote down all of his experiences, put it in a manila envelope, put it on his mantle. That was stolen. He called the police. They wouldn't do anything. I did one time get a threatening phone call, or I took it that way, from some guy in the military who was going on and on about his secret clearance, and then basically told me what I was doing was dangerous. looking into UFOs. And I'm like, oh, really? How's it dangerous? And he says, well, it's not what you think it is. And so I'm like, well, what is it? He says, you're barking up the wrong tree. So he was kind of being real coy and at one point says, there's no pay dirt in it anyway. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Either it's dangerous and there's pay dirt in it, or it's not dangerous and there's no pay dirt. You can't really have it both ways.
Right.
So yeah, maybe some government interference with witnesses. And one Men in Black case, one guy in the book, Ramon, had a weird encounter where he saw these guys in a black limousine wearing sunglasses and black suits. These are not humans, I don't think, as we think of them. They talk strange, they walk strange. They usually only show up in cases involving a lot of physical evidence or multiple witnesses or photographs or something. That's the only time I've ever really gotten one that I can clearly say is probably Men in Black. Because this guy has the full range of encounters with abductions and sightings and landings and ghostly stuff. So I think that it doesn't turn up a lot, but certainly I've heard about it.
And you've heard of the other Men in Black that aren't so much as 3-letter agencies or anything like that, but quite possibly another entity, more of a humanoid type being, but not so human. They've been described as, ghostly white. Their mannerisms are very robotic. They're very not human, to what a lot of people have described.
Yeah. Like I said, only that one case with Ramon that I can think of off the hand. I know there are books on this, and I believe it does happen. And it's weird for sure. It sounds like these guys are infiltrated society to a certain degree. But I don't believe that they are humans as we think of them, for sure, because of some of the descriptions that you were just talking about.
It's fascinating, but it's very creepy and weird at the same time. Another question that is in the YouTube chat, Tobias would like to know how many military combat vets seen or had reported accounts.
Oh, lots of them. Absolutely. I've talked to a number of people who've been in the military who've reported encounters. Not all of them are necessarily combat vets. I know in Ramon's case, he had just had a major encounter with reptilian humanoids in the military. Basically, they took him to a hangar and showed him a UFO in a hangar, him and a bunch of other Marines, and marched out some reptilian humanoids, which were like 8 feet tall, 7 feet tall, very, very, twice the size of a normal human, very strong. And following that, he was shipped straight out to Vietnam, which is what they often do to people who have UFO encounters. And he had a bunch of encounters there with UFOs. So he's one guy for sure who I interviewed who has got a military record. One of my favorite military cases, this guy wasn't so much a vet in terms of combat, but he was stationed on the USS Clamagore, a nuclear submarine.
Okay.
Yeah, he was an electrician's mate. Ray Sachs is his name. And he's elderly now, retired, but had this incident, which was crazy, where they were like 1971, they're off the east coast of the United States, heading about 13 knots or so, 12 knots north up the coast. They're on the surface, and he's on watch with another petty officer. And the captain's up there and the second in command when this USO shows up, an unidentified submersible object, starts pacing the submarine right alongside it, far, far too close for any normal craft. And he said it was huge. It lit up, he doesn't know how big, but it lit up the water there in a perfect circle, real bright, and it was just under the surface there. And the captain calls out to the sonar, says, what do you see? I'm like, we don't see anything. We don't see anything at all. And what happened was this thing paced the submarine for a good 15 minutes. And one by one, the higher ranking officers came out on deck because they wanted to take a look at it. And none of them could figure it out. And finally, this thing, it had approached from the stern at like 100 knots, super fast, and left in another direction. Not quite as fast, but almost faster than our own subs for sure, and totally silent. And the second in command turns. This is Ray Sachs is watching all this. The second in command turns to the captain and says, "How do you want me to record this in the log?" And the captain says, "People who record this kind of incident do not move up in rank."
Wow.
Direct quote. So there's a problem there in my eyes. I mean, these guys, this is not being recorded. I have to think that the commander did tell his superiors at some point, but maybe they're instructed not to leave a written record. In fact, I know they're not, because I revealed that incident to other people who were in the military, and they're like, "Yep, I've got here. This happened too." And they told us a very similar incident where UFO shows up and it's not put in the log.
Sounds to me like it's common too. I mean, for a commanding officer, a CO, to actually respond in that way, seems like to me it's happened before, and that is the protocol. We just don't talk about it because, that's pretty much what happens. You don't move up in rank, and you might even be sent home in some way.
Yeah.
So,
some of these military witnesses, they have in the car and they go to the military doctor and describe what happened. And the military doctor is not the least bit surprised. Doesn't bat an eye.
Right.
So for sure they've heard of this.
And whether or not they believe it, that's, we don't know. But I have to at least think that they know that it's common and people are seeing something. So a little bit of bad news. Unfortunately, allergies have gotten the best of Jeremy Scott. We were, keeping in touch here, messaging back and forth. And unfortunately, he says as much as he loves hearing you, Preston, he can't call in tonight because his allergies are just killing him. So really bad tonight. But he did want me to pass on a question. He has read your latest book, and that's what, he had contacted me earlier today. Didn't foresee the allergy thing, but he wanted to call in and ask, are there any new accounts of USOs in the past few years since you wrote Undersea UFO Base?
I do get contacted every now and then. I've kind of put that on the back burner for now. But I do know that there was one case of someone who saw USO off the same area here where there's all kinds of activity, the Santa Catalina Channel, San Pedro Channel. And they were describing this object moving at like 1,000 miles per hour underwater.
Wow.
Only got a few cases like that. Most are kind of just chugging along there pretty fast, but still in a more reasonable speed. But there's a number of cases, 5 or 10, where they're moving at super high speeds like this. And so this wasn't, technically brand new sighting. It was one that had occurred some years earlier. So I don't have it takes a while for the brand new sightings to sometimes trickle down. But man, when these objects can move that fast underwater, man, that's crazy.
Absolutely. That's just way too fast. And thank you, Jeremy, for asking that question. And thank you, Preston, for answering that. Some more questions are popping up in the YouTube. Please, by the way, if you want to call in, the phone lines are open right now. The phone number is 1-800-588-0335. Again, that number is 1-800-588-0335. I posted it in the YouTube chat and the Discord Strange chat. If you want to call, please do. The phone lines are open. And, you can get your questions to Preston that way, and he'll answer them directly right over the air. The question that I was going to ask you here, let me see if I can just pull that up, is question for Preston. Is he a multiple abductee? And if so, does he get a sensation to let him know when they're coming to take him?
don't think I'm an abductee, but I'm, like I said, can't rule it out because there was at least that one incident.
Mm-hmm.
When someone has a very close-up UFO sighting, I'm like, this may not be a sighting. If it's within a couple 100 feet, I tend to think that there's probably some interaction going on there, and especially if they're having multiple sightings. I certainly fit that profile, but I have no memory of being on board a craft. I don't have any scars. It wouldn't surprise me if I were to go under hypnosis and something came up. But until I have clear-cut missing time, I have no plans to do that, or like anxieties or something. So I cannot say that I'm an abductee, no. And forgot the second part of the question.
If so, could you feel or get a sensation that lets you know that they're coming to,
I do want to
take you away?
I do want to remark on that because I did have that impulse once to go outside, and I kind of know what that feels like.
Wow. Okay.
Because the witnesses have described this to me.
Okay.
And there's a guy, one of the guys in the book, Gary, has all these encounters with grays. He's not super happy about it because they're kind of rude to him. He has painful abductions. They shot a needle in his head and used no anesthesia. He was pissed. He says grays walk around his house. He saw one once in his living room and it knocked him out. Second time he saw one, he ran up and he choked it around the neck and squeezed it for like 20 seconds.
Oh my God.
And its arms are windmilling around and telling him telepathically, get off of me. And suddenly, something rushed him from behind. So he's not happy, but he can feel him coming. And there's this paralysis kind of that people describe, this heaviness that they feel when they start coming close and into the room. And it stopped working on him. He could feel them coming, and he'd feel this paralysis and break free of it. Happened again. Grays showed up at his bedside. He jumped up and hit one in the face. He said, they're kind of really cute when they're, standing there looking all nice and innocent, but hit one in the face and its demeanor changed. It hissed at him. It opened its mouth wide and showed these tiny little jagged teeth. Heard this from other people. The tiny little sharp teeth.
Oh, wow.
And it was very menacing and not happy and knocked him out. But yeah, he can feel him coming, and other people tell me that for sure. Not always, but it's not uncommon. Yeah.
Do these grays always have the same type of description with the bulbous head, the huge almond eyes?
Yep. Pretty much.
Little mouth.
It varies a little bit. I mean, you get height from like 3 feet all the way up to 5 feet, 6 feet even. Usually not more than that. Whereas the praying mantis type are 6 feet is the bottom rung, maybe 5 feet, but usually 9 feet and up to 15 feet. So, but the grays, usually it's pale white skin or gray, large bulbous head, large dark eyes, very small nose, mouth, and ears. That doesn't change. There's variations, maybe a little bit larger head, maybe rounder eyes. Sometimes, maybe a little bit of a larger nose. Sometimes emotional, sometimes not. Sometimes obvious jumpsuits, or like a tinfoil type jumpsuit is described periodically, but usually it's like they appear almost naked. Right. I don't think they are, because people aren't seeing any, outward signs of, a nude body, which I think they probably do have some, but I believe they're wearing skin tight jumpsuits in most of these cases where people think that they possibly may be undressed.
Do you think that they're organic, or that they're some kind of robot, mechanical, hybrid type creature that are working for other species of aliens?
Well, we only know what we know, kind of, you know what I mean? So, and I don't like to speculate too much, but there does seem to be some pretty good evidence to say that some of these, particularly perhaps the smaller grays, are not biological beings as we think of them. Maybe androids, robotic type robots. Yeah. Because people have seen them switched off, stacked up, or they're marching in lockstep and have no emotions and don't seem to, have any of those more complex functions we see in higher creatures. But it's very hard to say. They could be just little workers. We don't know for sure. But I think mostly they're biological beings. I think it's a little bit of a trick question because, like us, they have implants. They probably have artificial joints, and God knows what they're hooking up their brains into, and ours for that matter.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, they're biological for sure. And the reason I say that is not just they look like us, and they've got watery eyes, and they have an odor. I did a study on this in one of my books, The Smell of UFOs, and it falls into two categories. People smell a chemical or metallic odor, but very often people will describe an organic odor aboard UFOs. And some ETs have a distinct smell. I heard a couple of people distinctly say, beans. It smelled like beans. But yeah, funky odor, cheesy, this sort of thing. Cinnamon, that comes up a couple of times.
Okay.
Whitley Strieber described it as like wet cardboard, woodsy, sort of wet dog fur, this sort of thing, which makes me think we're dealing with biological beings here.
Yeah, definitely have an odor of some type. And I'm trying to get most of these questions from the YouTube because there's some questions that came up in the Discord channel that relate to some of the current events that have been going on that we talked about. And I'll get to that here in a second. But first I want to mention that I really would love people to get on the phone and call the number 1-800-588-0335. If not in the next 5 minutes after the last break, because this is your chance right now to talk to Preston Dennett. So jump on it while you have the chance. 1-800-588-0335. Don't worry about how you sound. Don't worry about your questions. Just get on the phone and call in. Let's see. There was a couple other questions here I wanted to get to. There's another here's a Bigfoot and UFO question. Is there any connection between Bigfoot and UFO in your opinion?
Not in most cases, for sure. Because I have looked into Bigfoot. Didn't want to. That was another thing I kind of dragged into kicking and screaming. So I knew it was going to be like a can of worms for sure, and it was. Because it's a real phenomenon, and I had to study it for years to really be comfortable with the evidence. And most Bigfoot cases have nothing to do with UFOs, nothing. And same is true with UFOs. But there's this tiny residue of cases, like not even 1%, when you consider the numbers of cases, that they perfectly intersect. They are occurring at the same time, or nearly the same time, or together precisely in time and location. It makes it very difficult to understand what's going on here. I remember my first Bigfoot UFO case occurred in, this guy called him from Canyon Country here in Southern California. And I thought, Canyon Country, that's not too far from where I live. Turns out it's on the edge of the LA National Forest. And I looked it up. It's got a history of Bigfoot activity. What happened was he had a UFO land in his backyard. Blue and white lights. He saw this. It was very close up. No structures out there. Takes off. Next day, Bigfoot shows up. Right in the same spot. You could hear it roaring. His dogs were going crazy. He felt like it was reading his mind. Which I thought, great, telepathy with Bigfoot. Turns out that is a thing. I did not know that when I investigated it, but that turns up in other cases. And it scared him badly. He found some footprints, nothing conclusive, but he had a poltergeist outbreak right after that. which is like, oh, this is all these things coming up together. And I got another case like that. And I know of several famous cases in Pennsylvania. I know of a case in Colorado where a guy came upon a landed UFO with, human-looking ETs, and they had a Bigfoot there with him, and they were ordering it around. And he was really upset because he was having real big problems with Bigfoot on his ranch there in Colorado. So yeah, it turns out there's a good 50 cases that I know of, and they're all over the world. And I don't know quite what to make of them unless ET is aware of Bigfoot and it's an intelligent creature and they're interacting with it like they do with us, perhaps. Or perhaps it's a closer relationship. I don't know. But again, most cases do not intersect. So it's hard to figure out.
Yeah. I feel that there is some kind of connection. And we talked earlier, and you said basically the same thing. It was a complete synchro, Preston, that a lot of these topics that we talk about are all connected in some way. Whether it's cryptids, whether it's, UFOs or aliens, and ghosts and demons and supernatural occurrences, paranormal activity. I feel it's all connected somehow. And I believe you feel the same way. And so do a lot of the people in the audience. And so I think what we're all trying to do is we're just all trying to connect the dots and basically try to figure out this, this great question. What's really going on? Why don't we go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we'll get into some more paranormal, and we'll get to some more questions from the Discord chat, and definitely get into current events that Preston and I were talking about as well. CZG, I see you in Discord. We're going to get to your questions. But again, the number is 1-800-588-0335. You can call in after this last break. This is Beyond the Strange. I am your host, Dave Cruz. We're speaking with Preston Dennett. Don't go away.
Out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from johnpolkmedia.com, and you are listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Yohoy there, it's Gigi from Shift Happens, and you're shaking some conversational tail feather to the Fringe FM.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to, so I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 945-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. That's 945-882-7221. Or go to the website, angioprim.com.
Hi, Jeremy Scott here from Into the Paranormal, and I'm back live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fringe FM.
Everyone, this is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. And we are speaking with Preston Dennett, paranormal researcher, author of 26 books and more, 100 articles. His latest book is Onboard UFO Encounters, True Accounts of Contact with Extraterrestrials, and much, much more. It's been a fascinating interview. And, it goes by really quick. And once again, I just want to thank Preston for coming on the show. And thank you again, my friend.
Hey, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure with you. And indeed. And guess what, Preston? We got a caller.
Nice.
Yeah, right. So let's go ahead and bring that caller on. You are live with Preston Dennett and Dave Cruz.
Yeah, Dave, it's Michael. How you doing?
Michael, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Preston, I had a dream, and at the end of it, there's the question. But it was the tall grays, and it starts out to where I'm walking through this big white area. I'm assuming it was a ship. I don't know. And I felt like they were bidding, like they were bidding on me or trying to get, whoever can get his attention to get him over there wins, kind of thing. I ignored the whole thing. You walk back towards the back, there's like these little booths to sit in, and I was talking to a couple of other people. Had to get up. I guess I had to go to the bathroom. There's two black doors. I chose one, and things go black. Okay. Then I come to again, or you wake up consciously, and they're holding me down on some sort of bed, and I'm fighting them, and I felt a very bad pain in the lower part of my back. And then, I kept fighting it, and then I go black again, right? Okay,
right.
And I come back out of it, and suddenly I'm in a barn kind of setting, and you can see the hay and tools and stuff laying around. And I saw this big black eye. One of the boards was off the side of the building of the barn, and it was an old, abandoned barn. And I saw this huge black eye staring at me through it. And I saw a Phillips head screwdriver, yellow handle with white paint on it. I picked it up and I started running towards the eye. And I was going to stab the eye with the screwdriver. All of a sudden I heard, if you do this, you'll only be doing this to yourself. Now, are we a part of them?
Interesting.
All right. Yeah. Certainly people have been told that. It's a pretty interesting experience. Sometimes they will set up scenarios and make you think you're in a place that you're not. I had one lady who was taken on board and said it was set up to look like a living room. So
yeah, I've had that.
That sort of thing does happen. I do think that our relationship with them is probably closer than a lot of people believe, because there's a number of cases out there where Greys have said flat out that we were human. We looked human. We looked like you. But due to genetic damage, and it's described differently in some cases, but it's usually some type of war or some sort of conflict, caused them to lose their ability to reproduce. And they've been reproducing by cloning and doing this sort of hybrid baby thing, when in effect, they're really human like us. One lady said, "Oh, you're so ugly." And they said, "One day you will look just like us." So yeah, I think that they could be our children. This is a possibility. I'm not going to rule out these are, possibly time travelers coming from our own future.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rule it out. I still think we're dealing with extraterrestrials in the classic sense. There's a lot of human-looking ETs out there. It's the general human form. But yeah, I think Greys and humans are probably related.
Very fascinating.
Okay. Second question. Have you ever heard of some sort of a code from, I don't know how long ago, that would possibly dismantle the Greys, their efforts?
No, I can't say that I have. We still don't quite understand what the whole agenda is with the ETs. I think we've got a pretty good handle on it. I think it's probably a mistake to lump all the Greys into one category, because there does, I talk to a lot of people. Some people are not happy with, what their encounters, and feel like they're being treated
I'm not
rudely.
either.
Where others are fine, and point to healings and, have had no fearful encounters. So you get a range, and I think some are a little more ruthless perhaps than others. They have a job to do and they're not worrying about how people feel. It's like dealing with, perhaps a military. They're not super friendly. They don't got time for that. That's kind of the sense I'm getting. But so that's kind of the worst I think we hear mostly is, people being treated with very little respect or emotion. They don't seem to purposefully hurt people in, an intent to enjoy our pain.
No, but they definitely were hurting me. One other thing, I have a tree on my property, and I call it a crop circle tree. About a year ago, I was down there in the wintertime. I have pictures of it when it was totally straight, growing straight and everything. And last year, first cut of the season for the yard, I keep a part of my property mowed down there. And this tree was totally bent over, and the whole side of the tree was touching the ground. But it didn't grow that way. I have pictures of it standing straight up. And when I went over to try to lift it, it was like pinned to the ground. Now it's starting to sort of straighten back up, but you still can't push it back up. And I'm assuming because the tree grew that way, if it was too much, weight, like when the leaves were water, it would have pulled itself back up. But this thing was totally bent over. But it didn't start out that way. And it was done, I think, May of last year.
Wow, like overnight type of thing?
So, yeah. Oh, it was over. It had to be. I mean, because you would, if it were like that, the honeysuckle would have pulled it down on the ground, or something had to weigh it down for it to grow that way.
Right.
And I have pictures of my dog next to it. It's standing straight up. But I went down there, and it was just totally bent. I've got pictures on it, but it's just totally bent over. And you cannot push it back up. And the only thing that came to mind was crop circle.
Yeah, there are a bunch of cases where these objects do affect vegetation in really weird ways, from accelerated growth.
Well, it's not accelerated, but I mean, if it were bent over like that, the trunk should have cracked or something.
Right.
Yeah. Or you should have gotten weighted down, because we had a lot of rain. There was a lot of leaves on it. And I kept looking at that thinking maybe it just got weighted down and pulled it over, but it shouldn't have. It should have just sort of maybe pushed it to the side and it would spring back up.
Yeah,
Because there are plenty of the trees. Huh?
Yeah, I've heard of instances like that. Certainly, yeah, crop circles. It's the same thing. They're not being, destroyed in terms of the reeds aren't being cracked. So
Yeah, it was just
some
like it
other
was just
force.
totally natural.
Yeah, that's weird.
And it was the only tree. And I looked up online to see if there was some sort of disease that would do that to the tree, but there isn't any. So
I think sometimes they leave calling cards, like look at this.
yeah, but that's on the back of my property.
Well, you never
They
know.
do it
Mike.
on purpose. Yeah, I think they do that kind of thing on purpose sometimes.
We got another call, Mike. Sorry, we're gonna have to move it on.
Okay, that's fine. All right, thanks, Preston.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 408, you're on the phone with Preston Dennett and Dave Cruz. Hello, 408. Hello.
Talk about. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Hear me?
Yes. Who's
hear
this?
me now? Hi, this is Suzette.
Hey,
How you
Suzette.
doing?
Doing good.
Oh,
You're
good.
perfectly fine. You're on with Preston Dennett.
Hi, Preston. I was just saying that, when you couldn't hear me, I was saying, can we just get together and do some coffee together? Because it feels like there's so much to talk about, right? And all these experiences feel like these puzzles, right? These pieces of the puzzle that validate what people know. And I was just wondering, have you heard from the people you contacted, anybody talking about them using the type of mind control where they put pressure on a different part of the brain to invoke fear, because that fear is not really there and they're really helpless. But if they don't conjure up that illusion of fear, they lose control. Have you heard of any other experiences like that?
Yeah, I have. Thanks, Suzette, for calling. And I heard cases just like that. One springs immediately to mind. I actually presented his case in a former book, Inside UFOs, where he had an object land in his backyard. And he was pretty super excited about it. This is up in Missouri, in a pretty rural area on their farm. And nobody was in the house. It was just him. And he's running out into the backyard and going to take a look at this thing, and is marching up to it pretty excited when he reaches this point where he felt a wall of fear, is how he described it. And wave of fear came over. He stepped back and the fear evaporated immediately. Stepped forward, and it was this feeling of dread. He was able to take a few more steps, but beyond that, he could not move because he felt it was a manufactured fear that was being somehow emitted from them to stop him from getting any closer. So yeah, I have heard that. I think they are very curious about people's emotions. They don't quite understand fear. There are some cases, I think, where they're studying this sort of thing, but it does seem to be something they have used to sort of stop people from moving forward. So yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay.
Well,
Well, that kind of leads me to my second question, if I may.
Go ahead.
It's going to maybe sound kind of silly. You could turn like a funny story out of this, kind of like a dark comedy. But have you heard about like accounts where people would see them in their house and they would shapeshift into the height of an object, like a vacuum or a light, just so that the person doesn't realize they're there? They'll start playing with these, again, mind programs. Okay. Yeah. Oof.
Preston?
Yeah, I don't often hear object, but definitely people will see them and then suddenly not care, like it's not important, this sort of thing. Or they'll appear as, particularly in front of children, a huge variety of what I would call disguises. Maybe not so much screen memories, but they're literally like appearing as this, like teddy bears, clowns, superheroes, cowboys. Some people, come away with thinking they saw Dracula or monsters, or relatives. They'll disguise themselves as your mother or a grandparent, or a very good-looking, human that you're attracted to. So they do put on disguises. I'm not sure it's shape-shifting in the sense of they're physically transmogrifying, or if they're just making you see what they want you to see.
Mind control.
Right. I think that's probably what's
that
going
makes
on.
sense.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, welcome to my childhood. Thank you.
Wow.
I have one last question if you have a second. Do you have a second?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, last question, and I'll leave you guys because I know I'm hogging this up. But one thing I found while driving through Roswell, thank you so much. I seriously want to talk more. This is so intriguing, and I love this. My sister and I 2 years ago were driving to Roswell for a conference, and not in Roswell, but outside of Roswell, we just started bawling, crying, like morbidly crying, like a massive loss. And we're looking at each other like we're nuts. And then I'm like, this was like a fight here. And my sister and I'm like, yeah, they were ambushed. They were ambushed, and it was more than one ship. It was multiple ships. Felt like that our military had ambushed all these ships that were coming to Roswell. And the story of Roswell is not one ship, but multiple ships. And I'm wondering if that also sets these horrible tales in the future of the Greys. Maybe there was like an incident in the past that kind of split relations, Have you heard anything about that, or anything that you could share with that type of prognosis? Because when we got to the conference, everyone's like, we were crying on the way here. And someone's like, yeah, there was more than one ship. And this sense of heartbreak and sadness. So I don't know if there was any accounts about that you're familiar with or heard anything about that.
What do you say, Preston?
No, I can't say I've heard anything quite like that. It doesn't surprise me. There are, of course, many accounts of multiple objects coming down in New Mexico. And it does appear that our government is purposely bringing some of them down. And yes, there are accounts of strained relations for sure, in terms of us shooting at UFOs and pilots disappearing and, deals being made and being, not going well, such as, the Eisenhower meeting with the Greys at Edwards, or meetings at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. So it's possible, this whole Roswell incident caused a lot of strife. Sounds like you're picking up on it, and other people were. So that's really interesting to me. Because, there's sure a lot of craft coming down. It's not just Roswell. It's not just the Aztec crash and the Corona crash. There's a bunch in New Mexico. It's probably leading the states, but a lot of UFO crashes across the United States. We're talking hundreds. So, I think it's a real problem.
I wonder if there's some magnetic field in New Mexico, because it literally feels like a magnetic field, like a quartz underneath. I was driving cross country a couple of times this year, and New Mexico is always a different frequency than the rest of the country. And when you go to places like white sand, and it's all selenite, that crystal, it just feels otherworldly. So I'm curious to see and hear if anything pops up from us talking.
Well, I know Sedona has a lot of that kind of. Yeah, thank you. Sedona has a lot of that kind of thing. I know Topanga Canyon has a lot of crystal as well. It could be something that opens it up somehow, like a portal or a vortex.
Yep, but I agree with you, Preston. And I just want to mention really quick to the audience, because it's going to be out there pretty soon. Suzette's going to join me next week on the show, and we're going to talk about her experiences and what's happened in her past. With all these different phenomena. So Suzette is definitely no stranger to a lot of these things that we've talked about tonight. But thanks again, Suzette, for calling in, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you, Preston and Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of these experiences, Preston, tonight that were talked about. I mean, it's just so common. You write about them in your books. You've lectured on them. And conferences and different places. There's one other thing that we didn't cover tonight. Well, we haven't got to it yet, but we're going to right now, because Don in the Discord chat wants to know: did Preston see the UFO crash video in Brazil? And I'm assuming it's the recent one that happened last week.
I was pretty excited at first. There seemed to be a lot of buzz about it. And I'm excited to see if something comes of it. I'd like to hear from the first-hand witnesses. I'd like to see some better footage. I'm not sure it's the smoking gun we're all looking for. It's certainly interesting. I know that there's some major Brazilian UFO researchers who say it's not looking so good in terms evidence-wise. probably a little too early to say one way or another. But I sure hope it's not a hoax, because these things get so sticky when you try to investigate them.
Sure.
You know, because if there's too many allegations of a hoax, that makes me suspicious. I'm very interested to see how it all rolls out, but at this point, I'm kind of not in a position to really investigate it firsthand. So I'm keeping close tabs on it, and I'm eager to see if anything comes of it for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that for some reason, it seems that a lot of that footage has been taken off the internet. I mean, you can't find it. So I'm not sure if it's taken down because it's disinfo or if it's fake news or anything like that, or if perhaps someone just doesn't want us to see it and ask questions. I don't know, but it is kind of bizarre that that's happened. Also, I know that the coronavirus is running very rampant right now in Brazil. There's a lot more death. The death toll is really high in Brazil right now. I've also heard on Clyde Lewis's show Ground Zero, there have been reports of the coronavirus has struck so hard that there's actual corpses in the streets of Brazil, equally to what happened earlier in China when this first broke out, and there was just corpses and bodies seen in the streets. It sounds like a horror movie, but apparently this is fact, and this is happening in Brazil right now. So what's happening in Brazil right now? Crazy stuff, obviously. We'll just have to wait and see what happens next. Another question from Discord chat from Don: is Preston in contact with the Pleiadians?
I wish. I don't think so. I think on some level, though, they are aware of me. I really do. Because there's been a few weird things. Like one guy for this book, I was interviewing Ramon, and he called me back. We had done a bunch of interviews. His case is very extensive. His experiences started when he was 5 years old and are still ongoing. He's 73. So it's a major case. But I was interviewing him. This is some time back. And he called me back like the next day and said, while we were doing our interview, right after we hung up, my son comes walking in and said a UFO had just landed in the street in front of the house. So what? I'm like, are they listening in on our interview? I asked another lady to go on TV once. She was having all kinds of encounters from her home in North Hollywood, here in California. And she's like, sure, it's just a little cable station. And it was like 4 or 5 days before she was going to go on, 3 days, not long before. Or she calls me up and says, I can't go. The Greys came and they're mad. They don't want me to talk. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they're keeping tabs. They must know I'm talking to you. I've had some sightings. So I feel like there's a level of contact.
Right.
But like Gary, one guy interviewed in England, he had an experience where, he's had a lot of times where he's been taken on board. He had this one experience where he turned around when he wasn't supposed to and saw a warehouse full of people. It's his contention that probably most people are being abducted. And I've had other people tell me this who are abductees. This is, they think it's a lot of people, if not everyone, and that most people just don't remember. So that I don't know. I don't know about that, but whew.
Might be keeping tabs on you there, Preston. You never know. One last quick question, and then we got to wrap it up. Does Preston think that the Greys are AI devices and not actual biological beings? Actually, we did talk about that. But if you want to reiterate that, that's fine.
Yeah, I think in some cases they are probably robotic, but most cases biological beings like us, for sure.
All right.
For a number of reasons, I believe that's the case.
All right, there we go. So, Preston, thanks again for being on the show tonight. I would like for you to please let the audience know where they can find you and everything that's you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks very much. If you just Google my name, it should take you to my website. But my actual website address is PrestonDennett.weebly.com. That's 2 N's, 2 T's. Got all my books there, excerpts, so you can check out, a lot of my research there, and contact me through my website. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Preston. Let's keep in touch and not make it so long before you come back on the show again.
Hey, you got it.
And
had a blast.
Maybe see you in Catalina sometime.
Yeah, we've got to do that.
All right. Thanks again, Preston. You have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, everyone. Preston Dennett. Fantastic show tonight. I want to thank everyone who called in and who asked questions. Everybody in the YouTube chat, everyone in Discord, thank you very much. And it was a fascinating show. Went by way too fast. Really quick, I just want to say that Beyond the Strange is owned and copyrighted by Dave Cruz, cannot be simulcast, rebroadcasted, or copied without written consent of Beyond the Strange. Also, the views and opinions are not necessarily that of Beyond the Strange, hosts, guests, and affiliated networks. Listeners are always encouraged to conduct research and formulate their own opinions. Remember, next week, we will be talking with Suzette Marie. She just called in today, and it's going to be a fascinating show. Also, there'll be some shows during the week. Remember to keep checking beyondthestrange.com and always like, subscribe, and share the show. Thank you very much. Love you all. You guys have a safe and great week. And stay strange. We'll see you next week. Hasta.